Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The streets of Lagos pulsed with life even as the night deepened. The distant honks of Danfos wove into the steady hum of conversations spilling from open-air bars. Victoria Island glowed with neon lights, its high-rise buildings stretching into the sky, a testament to the city's boundless ambition. Inside one of the most exclusive event halls, the annual Elite Business Gala was in full swing. Men in sharply tailored suits and women in dazzling evening gowns mingled beneath the shimmering chandeliers. Deals were being brokered between sips of champagne, and reputations were being built with a single handshake. Amara Nwosu adjusted the sleek emerald dress that hugged her curves, took a steadying breath, and stepped forward. This was her first time attending such a high-profile event, and she was determined to make an impression. But tonight she wasn't here to network. She was here to forget. A meeting written in the stars. Amara had spent 5 years at her former company, working tirelessly for a promotion that never came. Instead, she had been overlooked in favor of the CEO's nephew, a man with half her skills and none of her ambition. The injustice still burned inside her, but she had learned an important lesson. Lagos rewarded the bold, not the loyal. Enjoy yourself tonight, Tosin had told her before she left. For once, Amara, just let go. And that was exactly what she intended to do. She moved through the crowd, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. The golden liquid was cool against her throat as she took a sip, letting her eyes wander over the sea of faces. That was when she saw him. A man stood by the bar, his presence commanding without effort. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in an impeccably tailored black tuxedo. His sharp jawline was accentuated by a neatly trimmed beard, and his dark eyes carried an intensity that made her stomach flutter. He wasn't like the other men in the room, the ones who laughed too loudly or flaunted their wealth with arrogance. There was a quiet confidence about him, an effortless magnetism that drew her in before she even realized she was moving toward him. As if sensing her gaze, he turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, the noise of the gala faded into the background. Then he smirked. "Are you going to stand there all night, or are you going to join me for a drink?" His voice was smooth, deep, and slightly amused. Amara arched a brow, recovering from the effect he had on her. "You assume I want to join you?" He chuckled, taking a sip of his whiskey. "I assume you're intrigued." He wasn't wrong. "What if I told you I don't drink with strangers? Then I'd have to introduce myself." He extended a strong hand. "Keen." She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. A slow, deliberate handshake. "Amara. Beautiful name." She rolled her eyes playfully. "Do you say that to all the women? Only the ones who make an entrance like you?" The warmth of his hand lingered even after he released hers. She should have walked away. She should have reminded herself that men like him, men who exuded power and charm, were dangerous. But something about him made her want to take the risk. A night of no regrets. One drink turned into 2. Then 3. They talked about everything and nothing, about the absurdity of Lagos traffic, about their shared love for literature, about how the city's high society was just an illusion of perfection. He listened to her with genuine interest, his dark eyes never leaving hers. "I don't usually do this," she admitted as they stepped out onto the hotel balcony, the cool night air brushing against her skin. "Do what?" "Spend the night talking to mysterious men at galas." Keen leaned against the railing, watching her. "Then why are you still here?" She didn't have an answer. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the way the moonlight softened his features. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the fact that for the first time in a long time, she wanted to do something reckless. "Do you believe in fate?" she found herself asking. His lips curved into a slow smile. "Oh. But I believe in moments. And right now, this moment." He reached out, brushing a loose curl from her face. "Feels like one worth remembering." Her breath caught. The next thing she knew, his lips were on hers. It was soft at first, a teasing brush, before deepening into something raw and consuming. Her body pressed against his, and he responded with a hunger that sent shivers down her spine. It was the kind of kiss that made the world disappear. And for that night, Amara let it. The morning after. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting golden patterns across the white sheets. Amara stirred, stretching lazily before opening her eyes. Then it hit her. The hotel room. The faint scent of expensive cologne lingering on the pillows. The memory of tangled limbs and whispered words in the dark. She turned, expecting to find him beside her. But the bed was empty. Her heart sank as she sat up, scanning the room. His tuxedo was gone, his presence erased except for a single note left on the nightstand. No regrets. No name. No number. Just 2 words. A sharp pang of disappointment settled in her chest, but she quickly pushed it away. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? A single night, no complications. With a steady breath, she got out of bed, squared her shoulders, and told herself it was time to move on. Little did she know, moving on would be impossible. Because the man who had just disappeared from her bed would soon reappear in the most unexpected place. As her new boss. A shocking reunion. Amara adjusted her blazer, smoothing the fabric over her fitted skirt as she stood outside the glass doors of Pinnacle Innovations, one of the most prestigious tech firms in Lagos. This was the fresh start she needed. With her impressive portfolio and relentless determination, she had secured a senior marketing position. The opportunity was too good to pass up, and she was ready to prove herself. She walked into the boardroom confidently, nodding at her new colleagues. The meeting was about to begin. Then the door opened, and she saw him. Kene Obiora strode into the room with the same effortless authority he had carried that night. His sharp gaze swept across the table, acknowledging the executives. Then his eyes landed on her. For a split second, she held her breath. But his expression didn't change. There was no flicker of recognition, no sign that he remembered her at all. He continued speaking, completely unaware of the history between them. Amara sat frozen, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. He had forgotten her. The man who had turned her world upside down didn't even remember her name. And as he began assigning roles, completely professional and detached, one thing became painfully clear. She remembered everything. But to him, she was just another employee. A tension that couldn't be ignored. Amara sat stiffly in her seat as Kene continued speaking, his voice steady and authoritative. The same voice that had whispered in her ear just weeks ago. The same voice that had made her shiver under soft sheets. But here? That voice carried no trace of recognition. He didn't remember her. It shouldn't have hurt, but it did. She clenched her jaw and forced herself to focus on the meeting. This was her job. She had worked too hard to let a one-night stand, no matter how unforgettable, ruin it for her. Miss Nwosu, Kene's voice cut through her thoughts, making her snap to attention. Yes, sir? A flicker of something passed through his eyes at her response, but it was gone before she could place it. You'll be heading the launch campaign for our new product, he said, handing her a folder. I expect weekly progress reports. His tone was curt, professional. Understood, she said, taking the folder with steady hands. Good. Meeting adjourned. As the executives rose from their seats, murmuring amongst themselves, Amara let out a slow breath. She had survived the first meeting. Now came the real challenge, working under a man who had been inside her, yet acted as though she was just another employee. Gossip and whispers. By the time Amara returned to her office, the entire floor was abuzz with gossip. He's so intense, right? I heard he fired someone last week for being 5 minutes late to a presentation. Mr. Obiora doesn't play games. Amara ignored the chatter, though her mind replayed every second of that meeting. Girls spill? Tosin's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. Her best friend was leaning against her desk, a wicked grin on her face. How was the first meeting with your new boss? Tosin asked, crossing her arms. Amara sighed, tossing the folder onto her desk. It was fine. Just fine. Tosin arched a brow. You were all nerves this morning. Now you're acting like you sat through a Sunday sermon. What happened? Amara hesitated before finally admitting, "He doesn't remember me." Tosin's eyes widened. "Wait, you mean Keen? You're Keen? The one-night stand Keen?" "Sure," Amara hissed, looking around. Tosin lowered her voice but leaned in, excitement written all over her face. "You're telling me the man who rocked your world doesn't even remember you?" Amara exhaled, rubbing her temples. Not a single flicker of recognition. Tosin blinked. "Damn, yeah." For a moment, her best friend was silent, then she shrugged. "But, so what's the plan?" "What do you mean, what's the plan?" Tosin smirked. "Are you going to remind him?" "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because this is my job. My dream job. I worked my ass off to get here. I'm not going to throw that away over some man, especially one who doesn't even remember I exist." Tosin hummed thoughtfully. "Fair point. But you do realize you're going to be around him a lot, right? Working closely with him?" Amara sighed. "I know. And you're sure you can handle that?" She hesitated. Could she? Before she could answer, a voice interrupted them. "Miss Nwosu?" Amara turned, heart lurching at the sight of the woman standing in her doorway. Zanab Abdullahi, Pinnacle Innovations Golden Girl, and Amara's new workplace rival. A competitive edge. Z stepped into the office, her sharp gaze flicking over Amara like she was sizing up competition. Her tailored navy blue dress hugged her slim frame, and her sleek, straightened hair fell flawlessly over her shoulders. "Word around the office is that you've been assigned the new product launch," she said, a polite smile on her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. Amara kept her expression neutral. "That's correct." Z folded her arms. "Interesting. That's one of the most high-profile projects this quarter. I assumed Mr. Obiora would have given it to someone more seasoned." Amara didn't miss the subtle insult. She matched Z's smile with one of her own. "I guess he saw potential." Z chuckled lightly. "Or he's testing you. Then I'll have to make sure I pass." For a second, their gazes locked in silent challenge. Then Z's expression softened, just a little. "Good luck, Amar. You're going to need it." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away. Tosin let out a low whistle. "Well, she's charming." Amar exhaled. "She's a shark. And I'd bet my salary that she wants my project?" Tosin shrugged. "Then don't let her take it." Simple. But not easy. Especially when her biggest distraction wasn't Z, but Keen. Close proximity. The next few weeks were complicated. Keen was a relentless boss, demanding excellence in every aspect of work. He was strict, thorough, and didn't tolerate mediocrity, which meant Amara was constantly in his line of sight. "These numbers don't add up, Miss Nwosu," he said one afternoon, frowning as he scanned her presentation slides. She straightened. "I can explain." "Fix it. By tomorrow morning." Her pulse spiked, but she nodded. Understood. The man was impossible. And yet, there were moments. Fleeting ones. Moments where his fingers lingered just a second too long when handing her documents. Moments where his gaze softened when he thought she wasn't looking. Moments where he seemed almost familiar with her. But then, as quickly as they came, those moments disappeared. One afternoon, after another grueling meeting, she found herself alone in the office kitchenette, nursing a cup of coffee. The door opened, and she felt him before she even turned. Keen stepped inside, rolling up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt. "Long day?" She nodded. "Yours?" He exhaled. Silence stretched between them. Then suddenly he spoke. "Have we met before?" Her breath caught. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze. For the first time, there was something there. Flicker of something. But before she could respond, Z's voice echoed from the hallway, calling his name. The moment shattered. Keen gave her one last glance before walking away, leaving Amara with a racing heart and 1,000 unspoken words. The business trip. Just when she thought things couldn't get more complicated, HR sent an email. Subject: Upcoming business trip, you and Mr. Obiora. Her stomach flipped. She was going to be traveling with Keen. Alone. For an entire weekend. This wasn't just walking on eggshells. This was walking on fire. And she had no idea how she was going to survive it. A trip that changes everything. The sleek private jet hummed softly as it soared above the Nigerian skyline, cutting through the clouds on its way to Accra. Amara sat stiffly in her leather seat, pretending to focus on the document in front of her. But her mind was far from the spreadsheets. Sitting just a few feet away was Kene, her boss, the man who didn't remember her. And now, for the next 3 days, she would be in close quarters with him. Pinnacle Innovations was partnering with a Ghanaian tech giant for a major expansion, and Kene had personally assigned Amara to lead the marketing pitch. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, one that could define her career. But that wasn't what made her hands tremble slightly as she turned a page. It was the way Kene kept glancing at her, like he was trying to remember something just out of reach. The flight attendant approached, offering refreshments. Amara took a glass of water, but before she could take a sip, Kene spoke. "Miss Nwosu, are you always this quiet?" Her fingers tightened around the glass. "I didn't realize silence was a flaw." His lips twitched, almost as if he was amused. "It's not. Just unexpected. You're usually sharp with your words." She raised a brow. "You pay that much attention to me?" His expression remained unreadable. "I pay attention to everything." Something in his tone made her skin prickle. She decided to test the waters. "Including your employees?" Kene studied her for a long moment, then looked back at his laptop. "Only the ones worth noticing." A shiver ran down her spine. Did he know? Did he remember? Or was she just reading too much into nothing? Nighttime confessions. The hotel was one of the most luxurious in Accra, its lobby dripping with understated opulence. Amara checked in, trying to steady her nerves. She needed to focus. This wasn't about Kene. This was about the deal. After an exhausting day of meetings, she found herself on the rooftop terrace, staring out at the glittering city below. The warm Ghanaian breeze kissed her skin as she exhaled, letting go of the stress of the day. "You always disappear after meetings," a deep voice said behind her. She didn't turn. "Maybe I like my solitude." Kene stepped beside her, resting his hands on the railing. "Or maybe you just don't like being around me." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You have a way of making everything about yourself, don't you?" He smirked. Occupational hazard. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Have we met before?" Her stomach dropped. Slowly, she turned to face him. His dark eyes were unreadable, but there was something else there. Something that hadn't been there before. "What makes you ask that?" she said carefully. Kene exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know. It's strange. Sometimes when I look at you, I feel like I should know you." "Like I've?" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Never mind." Amara's heart pounded. This was it. This was the moment she could tell him. But she didn't. Instead, she smiled, forcing herself to play the game. "Maybe I just have one of those faces." Kene studied her for a long time, his gaze intense. Then, unexpectedly, he chuckled. "Maybe." But something told her he didn't believe that. Not entirely. A memory unlocked. The next day was filled with back-to-back presentations. Amara was in her element, delivering a flawless pitch that left the Ghanaian executives thoroughly impressed. By the time the meetings ended, the deal was nearly sealed. The only thing left was a final dinner to celebrate. Amara excused herself early, needing a moment to breathe. She retreated to the bar, ordering a glass of wine. Then, she felt him before she saw him. Kene slid onto the stool beside her, his presence as commanding as ever. "You did good today." She took a sip, hiding a smile. "Was that a compliment?" He smirked. "Take it before I change my mind." She chuckled. "Duly noted." For a moment, there was silence. Then Kene set his drink down and turned to her. "You remind me of someone." Her breath hitched. "Someone?" she echoed. His brows furrowed slightly. "Yeah. A woman I met a while ago. I don't remember much, but I remember how she made me feel." Amara's pulse skyrocketed. "What did she make you feel?" Kene's eyes darkened. "Like I was losing control." Heat pooled in her stomach. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "And is that a bad thing?" His fingers tightened around his glass. "I don't know." The air between them was electric, charged with something dangerous. Then, suddenly, the memory clicked for him. His entire body stiffened. He turned sharply to face her, realization dawning in his eyes. It was you, wasn't it? Amara's breath caught in her throat. She said nothing. She didn't have to. Because in that moment, Kene remembered everything. The aftermath. The tension in the hotel suite was suffocating. Kene paced the room, running a hand over his face. How the hell did I forget something like that? Amara sat on the edge of the couch, heart pounding. I don't know. He stopped pacing, turning to face her. Why didn't you tell me? She swallowed hard. Because I thought you didn't care. Kene's jaw clenched. That's not, he exhaled. I wasn't in a good place that night. I had too much to drink. And the next morning, when I woke up, he shook his head. I didn't remember anything. Just flashes. Amara's stomach twisted. So I was just a blur? He stared at her for a long moment before shaking his head. Oh. You were a feeling. Her breath caught. Kene stepped closer, his gaze searching hers. When I looked at you in that boardroom, something in me knew you. I just couldn't place it. Amara swallowed. And now? His fingers brushed against her wrist, igniting something dangerous between them. Now I remember everything. Her pulse thundered in her ears. He was too close. His scent, his warmth, everything about him was suffocating. And yet, she didn't move away. Didn't want to. But then, just as quickly as the moment had come, Kene stepped back, his expression hardening. This changes nothing, he said, voice unreadable. A sharp pain stabbed through her chest. Nothing. His gaze was guarded. You work for me, Amara. Her stomach turned. And that's all I am to you? His jaw tightened. It's better that way. She felt like she had been punched. For a moment she had thought, no, hoped, that he felt something too. But she was wrong. She squared her shoulders, forcing herself to stay strong. Understood, Mr. Obiora. Kene's expression darkened at her formal tone, but he said nothing. She turned, walking away. And as she stepped out of the suite, one thing became painfully clear. Kene might remember her now. But that didn't mean he wanted to. Cold distance. The flight back to Lagos was suffocating. Not because of turbulence or the cramped space. No, the tension between Amara and Kene was the real cause. Since the moment he had remembered her, he had barely looked at her. No stolen glances. No subtle smirks. No cryptic remarks. Just cold, professional indifference. He sat across from her, eyes glued to his laptop, fingers tapping away at the keys as if nothing had changed. As if she hadn't once been tangled in his sheets. As if they hadn't shared a past that neither of them could deny anymore. Amara exhaled quietly, staring out of the window. It hurt. More than she wanted to admit. She had been prepared for awkwardness, even discomfort, but not this. Not the complete erasure of whatever connection they had. And yet, wasn't this what she had wanted? For him to stay professional? For him to respect her position in the company? So why did it feel like a punishment? A flight attendant approached, offering drinks. Amara shook her head, while Kene wordlessly took a glass of whiskey. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unbreakable. It was going to be a long flight. The office whispers. By the time they landed in Lagos, Amara was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. Pinnacle Innovations was a fast-moving machine, and she had to jump right back into work. Unfortunately, it seemed she wasn't the only one who had noticed the shift between her and Kene. Gossip spread through the office like wildfire. Did you see how tense they were at the meeting? Something definitely happened on that trip. Maybe she messed up and he's about to fire her? Or worse. Maybe there was something between them. Amara clenched her jaw as she walked past a group of colleagues whispering in the hallway. She refused to let the rumors shake her. She had worked too hard for this job. She would not let anyone reduce her to office gossip. But she underestimated Z's scheme. Zanab Abdullahi was the type of woman who never let an opportunity go to waste. And Amara had unknowingly given her one. It started small. Comment here, a look there. Then it escalated. Casual remarks about favoritism. Whispers that Amara had landed the Ghanaian deal because of who she was to Kene, not because of her talent. A carefully planted rumor that they had shared more than just business on that trip. Amara noticed the shift almost immediately. The side glances. The hushed voices when she entered a room. The judgment. She confronted Z in the office cafeteria one afternoon, slamming her tray down on the table where Z sat with a few colleagues. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" Amara said, voice low but sharp. Z didn't even blink. "I don't know what you mean." Amara leaned in. "You're spreading lies about me." Z's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. "Are they lies?" A muscle in Amara's jaw twitched. "You're threatened by me. That's what this is." Z laughed lightly. "Oh, sweetheart. I don't get threatened. I get even." Amara's fingers curled into fists. "What do you want?" Z tilted her head. "Nothing. Just watching how quickly things can change when people start talking." It took everything in Amara not to throw her drink in Z's smug face. But she wouldn't stoop to her level. She would fight back her way. The breaking point. Kene didn't usually hold meetings on Friday evenings, but this one was different. The tension in the conference room was thick. Pinnacle's board members were reviewing the Ghana deal, and though everything had been finalized, Z had made sure to plant enough doubt about Amara's role in it. Some concerns have been raised about whether Ms. Nwosu's position on this project was due to professional merit or personal bias. One of the older board members said, eyes shifting between Kene and Amara. Amara's stomach turned. This was what Z wanted, to put her in a position where she had to defend herself. Before she could speak, Kene's voice cut through the room. There was no bias. His tone was calm, but sharp. Ms. Nwosu was assigned this project because she was the best person for the job. Her work speaks for itself. The room went silent. Amara's heart pounded. For the first time in weeks, Kene had defended her. The board members nodded, satisfied with his answer. The meeting continued, but Amara barely heard the rest. As soon as it was over, she rushed out, needing air. But Kene caught up to her in the hallway. "You should have reported Z to HR," he said quietly. She turned to him, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Oh, and would that have changed anything?" His jaw tightened. "It would have stopped the rumors." She let out a bitter laugh. "Would it? Or would it have made it worse? Because right now, I already look like that woman, the one who slept her way to the top." Kene's expression darkened. "You and I both know that's not true." "But they don't," she snapped. "And you let it happen. You pushed me away, acted like I was nothing, and now I have to deal with the consequences while you," she exhaled, shaking her head. "While you act like none of this matters to you." Kene's gaze was unreadable. "It does matter. Does it?" Silence. Then finally he spoke. "I stayed away because I thought it was the right thing to do. Because I didn't want to make things harder for you." Her breath hitched. "But maybe," he continued, voice softer now, "I was just afraid." She swallowed. "Afraid of what?" He stepped closer. "Of what I feel when I'm around you." Her heart pounded. But before she could respond, he took a step back, his expression closing off again. "This is complicated, Amara." And just like that, the moment was gone. She let out a shaky breath. "I don't need complicated, Kene," she whispered. "I need the truth." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. A decision to make. That night, Amara sat in her apartment, staring at the resignation letter on her laptop screen. Maybe Z was right. Maybe she would never be seen for her talent as long as Kene was her boss. Maybe it was time to walk away. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tosin. "Whatever you decide, make sure it's your choice. Not theirs." Amara exhaled, staring at the screen. Was she really ready to give up? Or was this the moment she fought back? She had until morning to decide. And when morning came, everything would change. A choice to make. The cursor blinked on Amara's laptop screen, taunting her. Her resignation letter was drafted, ready to be sent to HR. But she hesitated. Tosin's words from the night before echoed in her mind. "Whatever you decide, make sure it's your choice. Not theirs." For the first time since the rumors began, Amara asked herself, was she leaving because she wanted to, or because Z and the whispers had made her believe she had no other option? She had worked too hard to build her career. If she left now, she would be letting them win. With a deep breath, she did something unexpected. She deleted the letter. The Final Showdown. Monday morning came with a new sense of purpose. Amara walked into the office with her head held high, ignoring the hushed voices and curious stares. If she was going to stay, she needed to remind everyone, including herself, why she was here. The final stage of the Ghana deal was set to be presented to the entire executive board. It was the perfect opportunity to prove her worth once and for all. But Z had other plans. Moments before the meeting, Amara's assistant rushed into her office, looking panicked. Z just submitted an alternate pitch to the board. Amara's stomach dropped. What? She framed it as an enhanced strategy, but it's basically a takeover of your work. Amara's jaw clenched. She had expected this, but not so soon. She had two choices: confront Z or go into that meeting and outshine her. She chose the latter. The meeting that changed everything. The boardroom was full. Executives sat around the long table, murmuring about the two competing pitches. Z sat across from Amara, her smile smug. Kene, as usual, sat at the head of the table, watching everything unfold with unreadable eyes. The COO stood up. Since there are now two approaches to the Ghana expansion, we will be evaluating both before making a decision. Z went first. Her presentation was good, polished, strategic. But Amara knew the board wasn't just looking for numbers. They were looking for vision. And when it was her turn, she delivered. She didn't just recite statistics, she told a story. She painted a future where Pinnacle Innovations wouldn't just enter the Ghanaian market but dominate it. Where they wouldn't just be another tech firm, but the firm. By the time she was done, the room was silent. Then applause. Kene stood up, looking directly at the CEO. We move forward with Amara's strategy. Z's face paled. Amara didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She simply won. And for the first time in weeks, she felt like herself again. Kene's final confession. After the meeting, Amara gathered her things, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. Then a familiar voice stopped her. Amara. She turned to find Kene standing in the hallway. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said the last thing she expected. I don't want you to leave. Her breath hitched. I'm not leaving, she said cautiously. He shook his head. I don't mean the company. I mean me. Her heart pounded. Kene. I made a mistake, he cut in, stepping closer. I thought staying away would make things easier. I thought ignoring what I felt for you would make it go away. Amara swallowed. And now? His gaze burned into hers. Now I know it won't. Her chest tightened. She had spent so long wondering if he felt anything for her. And now, standing here, he was telling her exactly what she had wanted to hear. But was it enough? I don't want to be your secret, Kene, she said softly. I don't want to be the woman people whisper about behind closed doors. His jaw clenched. I know. Then what do you want? He exhaled. Ooh. Silence stretched between them. Then he did something unexpected. In front of everyone in the hallway, he took her hand. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just them. For the first time, Amara let herself believe. Maybe this wasn't just a past mistake. Maybe this was something real. A new beginning. Days later, Amara sat in her office, staring at an email on her screen. It wasn't from Kene. It was from a private investor. An opportunity to start her own marketing agency. Her own company. Her own future. She glanced at the door, knowing Kene was just a few steps away. She cared about him. She knew that now. But she had spent so much of her life chasing what others expected. It was time to choose herself. And so, with a steady breath, she typed her resignation letter. Not because of Z. Not because of Kene. But because it was her choice. That night, she met Kene at his apartment. She kissed him slowly, memorizing the way he felt under her hands. I'm leaving Pinnacle, she whispered. His body stiffened. Amara. I'm not leaving you, she clarified. I just need to do this for me. His eyes searched hers. Then he nodded. Then do it, he said, voice raw. And when you're ready, I'll be here. A promise. A beginning. Not an ending. And for the first time in a long time, Amara felt free. Epilogue. 6 months later. The grand opening of Nwosu Marketing Agency was a success. Amara stood in her new office, overlooking the city. She had built this. She had won. Her phone buzzed. A message from Kene. Dinner tonight? My place? She smiled. She had chosen herself. And he had chosen to wait. Maybe fate did exist after all. The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.